Hey guys, welcome to my channel, Sew Ashley. Today's sewing challenge, we are taking on my friend's bridal shower dress. I'm going to be making the design, pattern, muslin, and dress. So here's the inspo pics that she showed me, and this was quite the process, so let's get started. I'm going to start making Kelly's bridal shower dress, and I just need to think through it. I did this sketch pretty much right after she got engaged. I already made her bachelorette party / engagement dress. And if you haven't seen that video, you should go check it out. So the first thing I have to do is start making the pattern. So it's gonna be pretty simple. I'm just gonna do a scoop neck and princess seams and then a circle skirt. I'm excited. So I should get started because I have 1 month or less than a month to finish it. I started off by tracing a really basic sloper for the bodice with 2 darts that I'm going to move to make princess seams. So I just traced the front and back and cut that out, including the darts. Then I drew a line from the dart to the bust point, and then drew where my new line is going to be for the princess seam. And then you want to cut almost all the way to the apex, but not through it, and then slide it over to close up that side dart. Then I made my marks to make it easier to sew it back together later. And then I realized I forgot to fix my armhole, so I just taped it back together temporarily and fixed that. And then I went in and fixed the neckline using the photo as a reference. Now it's time to add the seam allowance. So I went in and added a 1/4 inch seam allowance around the neck and armholes and 1/2 inch everywhere else, except for the center front line will be cut out on the fold. For the back, I added 1 inch to the center back and 1/2 inch on the side seams, and 1/4 inch on the armhole and back neck. And here are all the adjusted pattern pieces for the bodice. The next step was to cut them out of some cheap fabric to make the muslin. I pinned the back pieces to the front bodice and sewed everything together using a loose basting stitch. And I freaking ran out of bobbin thread when I was literally like 3 inches from finishing sewing. Here's how everything was fitting on the dress form with the circle skirt that I drafted, and you'll see that pattern later.
Nice.
After the first fitting, I needed to make some adjustments to the pattern. I needed to add some room in the bust at the princess seam, lower the neckline, also lower the back neckline, and add length to the entire bodice. So I went back to the paper pattern and adjusted that back neckline first. and added some length. Adjusting the princess seam was a little bit more complicated because I needed to add to the curve, but also make sure that both sides were matching up in length. So the front piece took a little bit more adjusting to make sure that it would still sew together nicely. And then I almost forgot to lower the neckline again. Now it was finally time to cut out the real fabric. So I laid a big tablecloth down on the floor because my skirt piece is too big for my table. And I wasn't gonna risk putting white fabric down on the floor raw. So I cut the lining out first, and here's that skirt pattern I was talking about. I'm cutting it out on the fold, so it's basically 2/3 of a circle when you unfold it. So not a full circle skirt, but still giving enough volume. For the outer fabric, I used this nice white satin, but I noticed there were a couple stains at the end of the fabric, so I had to kind of cut it out from the middle, but I got it for like $5 a yard, so I'm not really mad about it. For the bodice, we could finally move back to the table and I could use my rotary cutter. So I wiped it down, make sure that white fabric wasn't going to get stained. I cut out the bodice pieces of the outer fabric first. Then the ties for the bows and the waistband. Then for the lining, I just cut out the basic bodice pieces, just the front and back. And after I finished, I realized I cut myself. I didn't get blood on it. Then I was ready to get started sewing, but then I realized I still need to fill my bobbin again. Then I was actually ready to sew, and starting with the lining, I sewed together the princess seams, pinning together the two ends and then clipping it so that they would fit together. Then I went to press the seams open and I realized I still don't have a hem for some reason. To make sure nothing would grow on me, I stay stitched around the neckline and the armholes. Moving on to the outer fabric, I sewed together the princess seams the same way as the lining. And because it was a heavier fabric, it was slightly harder to get them to match up nicely, but we did. And then with the two bodice pieces sewn together, it was time to sew them together. So I pinned the lining to the outer fabric along the armholes and the necklines. And then I went back in and zigzag stitched the edge and flipped it right sides out. And this is how it looked pressed, nice and clean. Then I pressed the waistband to get it ready to sandwich between the outer skirt and bodice. Then I did the same thing with the bodice lining and skirt lining. Yeah. And you do want to clip your waistline because with a circle skirt, the seam allowance is going to be smaller than where your actual waist seam is going to be. And this is the point where it gets a little uglier to get prettier. So I pressed the waist seam on the lining and the outer fabric. And then I sewed them together by stitching in the ditch right underneath that waistband. Then it was time for the straps. So I sewed two of them just to see what the bow would look like tied on one shoulder. But I forgot to record it because I hated it so much. So I went back in and adjusted that tie pattern so the bow loops would be a little bit thicker, kind of like a bow tie, and the ends of the ties would be a little bit thicker too. And here's how that pattern looks like adjusted. And I cut enough pieces out for 4 straps, so 8 pieces total. So yeah, I sewed that together and then flipped it right side out, and it was already looking a lot better. Today is the last day I'm working on Kelly's dress. I just have to add the zipper and do the hem. It needs to be ready in 3 or 4 days. So right now I'm gonna add the zipper. I needed to seam rip a little bit of that stitching in the ditch that I did so that I could sew the zipper in so it looked clean on the inside too. I sewed the invisible zipper in with my zipper foot on the outer fabric first, and then I attached the lining to that seam allowance. After closing up the back, I did a baby hem on the outer skirt. And then I marked where that ended up on the lining so I could fold it under enough so it wouldn't show. Okay, here's the situation right now. Kelly's supposed to be picking up her dress later today, and it is technically finished, but I'm not happy with the zipper. It's like 1 inch too short, and I can't go get a longer zipper right now because it's like storming outside, and My car's not working. We're gonna maneuver. We're gonna figure it out. Right now it is 11:40. I guess wish me luck. So I seam ripped that zipper out. And I made my little loops for the top.
You make a loop-de-loop and pull, and your shoes are looking cool.
And I sewed my button on. And when I went to try on the mannequin, this happened. What do I do? I'm trying not to cry right now. Oh my god. It's done. It's done. And I try to put it on the mannequin, make sure it zips nice and looks good. Oh my god, what do I do? Do you think I can get it back on? How? So I'm gonna spend the next hour trying to put the zipper back together. Don't buy the zippers on Amazon. I got the stuff. I had to get a 20-incher, but we can cut it down. So, and then I also got these little pearl buttons because I figured if we have to redo it, why not improve it? That's all. Do you ever start sewing something and you're like, this is going a little too smoothly? I sewed it the wrong way. I didn't do the whole thing, just one side, but I was like, oh wow, that looks great. And then I was like, that's the wrong side. Oh my god, I'm losing my mind. It's now 4 o'clock. So I seam ripped that zipper again and sewed it back in the right way. And it was looking pretty good and pretty clean. And I love the new little pearl button, honestly. So I tried it on the mannequin one last time before Kelly came to pick it up, and it looked pretty good, but I'm not gonna say I was happy with it because it was frustrating. I was kind of over it. Ashley ended up sewing the zipper a 5th time, sending her into a mental spiral. But here is the final product. That's all I have for you guys. I hope you like how it turned out. I like how it turned out. I just don't like how I got there. But let me know what you think in the comments down below. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. Thanks for watching.